This is what I came up with as another example that would be something more like what you would have to do in the actual computer assignment. So there are the two groups there. That's the numbers of wins for two old-time hockey teams, right? So old-time hockey, like they talk about in Slapshot, actually. And the Canadians, or Canadienne to say it a little more accurately, still exists now. And the Maroons are also a team in Montreal. So I actually have the hockey reference page up. So for 36, 37, you can see them if I go down to where the standings are. They're both in the Canadian division. So the way it was really set up was the Canadiens were supposed to be the team that represented Montreal's French-speaking population, and then the Maroons represented the English-speaking population. So, and the New York Americans, obviously that's not a Canadian team. It actually did an arena share with the Rangers, and they both played in Madison Square Garden, which is not really that close to Canada, but we're going to overlook that. All right, so the important thing, I think, is basically how to use Minitab. So I want these two columns, the two columns of wins, and I guess incidentally, the reason I picked those years is because those were the years in which the Maroons existed, because they went out of business in 38, and also that it was when there was a two-divisional structure. So when there was, when there was a smaller league, they wouldn't have played as many games, that kind of thing. So the numbers might not have been that comparable. But I'm going to copy that into Minitab, and I'm just going to paste it right where that highlighted cell is, because what I want is I want those column headings to end up above row 1. So that's where they go, and so then that way row 1 is some numbers, right? It's going to be that first season in the list there. So once you get those in there, I think the first thing in the computer assignment is just to print the data. That's not too bad. If you just go up here to data, and then it should be, let's see, display data, which is way down here toward the bottom. And I think if I just select both of these, so select Maroons, select Canadians, okay, there. I think that's pretty much it. So that part's easy, like relatively speaking. And then to copy that into a Word document, you could use the down arrow that's way over here in the corner, or there's one where if you click on this box that the printed data is in, I get another one. This is the way I always do it, and then I just copy his picture, so that way I don't have to play with the formatting, and then post it into the Word document. And I have a thing about using borders. You don't have to, but it looks weird to me if I don't. And then that also means that it's a little too tall. I'm going to crop that down just for aesthetics. There we go. So there's the data. I think the next thing is like the means and standard deviations and stuff. So if I go back here, those are going to be under stat. So if I go to stat and then basic statistics and then display descriptive statistics. So I guess under stat, the first item, and then within that submenu, the first item. Then once again, I'm going to pick both variables. So pick Maroons, pick Canadians, and I don't think I need anything extra. So you could go in here where the statistics are, if you wanted other stuff, you could make Minitab compute it for you. But I think we just want the regular old descriptive statistics, so okay, and there they are. And then once again, we're going to want that table. So I'm going to copy that as a picture, and I'm going to put it in my Word document, and I'm going to crop it because it looks weird to me if I don't. And you don't actually have to do this, but it's going to bother me if I don't do it. So there. All right, so those are the first couple. It's just to get those things in there. I mean, I guess yours will look a little bit different than mine because it's different data, but notice where the column headings actually show up, right? Like it gets labeled in the printed data, but also in the descriptive statistics, it's like, okay, here's the Maroon stuff, here's the Canadian stuff. It's very clearly labeled which row is which, and that's what the column headings are for, right? Just to kind of keep everything organized. Let's see, then there are a bunch of graphs, so it's a dot plot, and then I think we've got a couple of histograms in there, and that sort of thing. And then I think a box plot too. So let's see. So, okay, if we want to make a dot plot, it's in the graph menu. So there's dot plot. We go there. I've got two of them rather than just one group like we had during class. So the thing that you want is this option down here. So for multiple Ys. So multiple Ys just means that you have multiple groups, basically. And you could do that with groups thing, and that would basically look the same. So like if you're looking at this one, you're like, well, what's the difference there? It'll graph just about the same thing. But since it says this one in the instructions, we'll go with it. So okay here. And then, let's see, I got to select my variables again. So Maroons, Canadians, and then maybe some labels. So I guess this would be, I don't know, Montreal NHL team wins from 1926-27 through 1937-38. Those are the years I have. The subtitle, number one, you're supposed to put your name in there. So I'm going to put a fake name just to amuse myself. I'm going to say my name is Harlan Rax, which there is a Rax in Harlan. I have not yet been there. Maybe someday, though. And then for footnote number one, I do have a source, so I might as well put it in. This is where you put yours, so I'll just say my source is hockeyreference.com. That's where I got all my stuff. So, okay. And then if I graph it, there we go. There's our double dot plot. All right. So let's see. If I copy that and then put that in here. Yeah, I kind of figured that would go on the next page. And that's where it is. All right. And then if anything, I guess you could say, well, like do either of these look like they're centered in different spots or anything? I guess with the Canadians, it's like you're getting more of these numbers on the high end that you don't really see with the Maroons. And you can also, if you want to kind of eyeball things with the shape, you can kind of use this stuff too, right? Like, it does look like maybe the Canadians are a little more spread out in the data. Like the Maroons have a couple of low ones, but other than that, they're pretty compressed. But then you go, okay, well, if the Canadians are more spread out, you should see a bigger standard deviation. If you go up there, yep, Canadian standard deviation is 4.7 instead of the 3.61 for the Maroons. Like, all right, that makes sense. All right, then I think the next thing is box plot and then the two histograms at the end. Okay, I'll probably just do one of the histograms because they're really identical to each other. But if we're going to do the double box plot, so let's see, box plot in the graph menu. And then we're going to want this one right here. So the multiple Y's simple again. And then we're going to pick our variables. And then, let's see, I guess we need to do our labels. Let's see, so once again, Montreal NHL team wins. Oops. 1926-27 through 1937-38. And my nom de plume of Harlan Rax, and put in my source of hockey reference. All right. And then we should get it. There it is. So, one thing that's noteworthy, and I think this will jump out right away, is that there's an outlier in the Maroons. That 12, I think that's what that is. That's what it looks like. Let's see. Yeah, it's the last one. The last year they were in existence, they had 12 wins. That ends up being an outlier, right? And you can see that asterisk right there. And then I think with these, we are supposed to get rid of the lines. So if you double click on the graph and then you get this pop out, then there, if I click on one of the horizontal lines and press delete, now they're gone. And then same thing with one of the vertical ones, delete, now they're gone, and then okay. And we get a slightly more, I guess, aesthetically pleasant looking graph. So copy that one. Now that would basically be done, and we can put it in here. And mine are so huge that they're coming out one per page. And I think that's just because my margins are so small. that it's printing it to cover the entire writing space of the piece of paper. Okay, so there we've got the box plots, the comparative box plots, because that's the thing that you have to do. And then the last thing is a histogram. So let's see, graph, histogram, right next to where dot plot was. And then it's one at a time with this. So you wouldn't do both variables simultaneously or both groups simultaneously. And then just say okay with the symbol. That's the one that you want. I'll just do the maroons one, I guess, since that's the first one that shows up. And then maybe labels, I guess distribution of Montreal Maroons wins per season in 1926-27 through 1937-38. Harlan Racks. Source. Oops. Got some transposed letters. HockeyReference.com. And let's see. That should get you the graph. And then there's another tweak that we have to make, but we need the graph first. So, okay, the thing that you're supposed to do in yours is if you get the pop out to change the number of bins to 4. So the way you do that is if I double click on the axis. There we go. And up in the top where you have these different tabs, if you go to binning, change the interval type to cut point, and then say for the number of intervals that you want 4, which makes sense for the number of data points that you have, right? If you want to keep the number of intervals close to the square root of the sample size, then I'll say okay. See, there we go, 4 intervals. And we're supposed to get rid of the grid lines too. So horizontal ones out and then vertical ones out. All right, so just click on those and then delete just like before and then OK. And then there's my graph of the maroons. I guess I could change that label on the x-axis to wins maybe. That might be better. There. Yeah, that looks better. And then copy graph to Word document, and there's my giant graph. And then there's another one that you have to do because in the actual computer assignment, you make one of these histograms for both groups. And then there are questions at the end about, well, they would involve perhaps like the shape and some of the summary values. But something, I guess, that might be relevant there that's certainly relevant here is looking at that graph. That thing is definitely left skewed, right? You got the peak on the far right. You've got a left tail that stretches way out across the picture, and you've got no right tail at all. So definitely left skewed. That sort of thing may play in somewhere. But I think that's pretty much the idea for what you'd have to do with Minitab in the first computer assignment.